It's 1910, a seaside holiday resort on the east coast of England. The North Sea, gentle as it can be, grey as it always is, relentlessly washes the rounded pebbles. The pale sun tries to brighten the grey afternoon, but almost gives up. And away at the end of the Pier Pavilion. Here, a small but talented group of entertainers, professionals of course, present a program of diverse material, songs, sketches and monologues, accompanied by one or two pianos.
The lovely lady of Alcala, the lady of Alcala, tra-la-la, tra-la-la. They met one eve in Alcala, tra-la-la, tra-la-la-la-la-la. He said, sweet maiden, fly with me.
These companies were a unique part of the pre-war entertainment scene at holiday resorts. In the cast of such a company was to be found a young, talented lad who had a pleasant voice and looked good. His singing and his developing sense of humour combined to make him a perennial favourite with concert party audiences.
Why? For Alcala isn't on the sea, it's nowhere near the sea. Tra-la-la-la-la. Still, that is the tale of the tall Alcady who sailed away with a lovely lady. Alca, 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 tra-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. Now when you sing such a song as this, tra-la-la, tra-la-la-la-la-la, all about a man and a maid and a kiss, a secret elopement and wedded bliss, they're all very much like this, tra-la-la, tra-la-la. So long as the tune has a right good swing, it doesn't much matter what words we sing. Alca, 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 tra-la, tra-la-la, tra-la-la, tra-la-la.
The scene could be Bournemouth, Margate, Clacton or Felixstowe, or anywhere the Englishman takes his seaside holiday. And between sleeping the hours away in his deck chair on the beach, he takes his shoes and socks off, rolls up his trousers, and paddles in 6 inches of the English Channel. There's something about this seaside scene which is, in many ways, unreal. But it's this unreality and wanting to be taken out of oneself that creates a ready audience for the show on the pier or the garden on the sands.
Have you ever noticed when you're by the sea, the things that people do there with impunity? If they did the same things when they're up in town, moral Mrs. Grundy on her face would wear a frown. Father, mother, all the family, toddle down to have that little paddle by the sea. Mother takes her stockings up upon the sandy shore and shows a lot of linen that she'd never shown before. You can do a lot of things at the seaside that you can't do in town. Fancy seeing mother with her legs all bare, paddling in the fountain in Trafalgar Square, bobbing up and down in the water. It would make the policeman frown. You can do a lot of things at the seaside that you can't do in town. You can do a lot of things at the seaside that you can't do in town.
Stanley Holloway was born in 1890 and was at the beginning of a career which was to take him from these modest seaside concert parties to the New York production and then the Theatre Royal Drury Lane production of Lerner and Loewe's My Fair Lady. But Stanley, you started off as a boy soprano.
Well, you see, as a boy soprano, I sang the solos in the church, and then after I left the choir, my voice started to change. I sang my last solo at a neighbouring church, another choir. I was engaged as a solo boy to sing "O Rest in the Lord" from Elijah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, rest in the Lord. You like that, you know?
Still do.
Rather like Clara Butt. And I suddenly realised that the higher notes were fading and the lower notes were building up. And so from then on, I started to sing what to me was an octave lower, like as I thought a man, you know, singing. And I was at a party one Christmas of a girlfriend of mine, and so she said, she played the piano, played for me some song. I think it was Down the Vale, I think the song was called. When you go down the vale, there's music in the trees, you know. And I sang it as a man and fooled about with it. And this girl's father came to me. He said, my dear boy, he said, don't make fun. He said, because you have a very valuable voice there, he said, which is going to see you through many, many years of success. And I thought he was kidding.
But the man wasn't kidding. Stanley did have talent, and soon he was making his name in vaudeville side by side with artists like Charlie Chaplin and Harry Champion.
I like pickled onions, I like piccalilli. Pickled cabbage is alright with a bit of cold meat on a Sunday night. I can go tomatoes, but what I do prefer is a little bit of cucumber, I come you come, a little bit of cucumber. A little bit of cucumber, I come you come, a little bit of cucumber. I'm Henry the Eighth, I am. Henry the Eighth, I am. I got married to the widow next door. She'd been married 7 times before. Everyone was an Henry. She wouldn't have a Willie or a Sam. I'm an 8th old man named Henry. Henry the Eighth, I am. Henry the Eighth, I am. Any old iron, any old iron, any old iron. You look neat, talk about a treat. You look dapper from your napper to your feet. Dressed in style with a brand new tile. Your father's old green tie on, but I wouldn't give it up for your old watch chain. Old iron, old iron. Any old iron, any old iron, any old iron. You look neat, talk about a treat. You look dapper from your napper to your feet. Dressed in style with a brand new tile. Your father's old green tie on, but I wouldn't give it up for your old watch chain. Old iron. Old iron, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, ha-ha-ha-ha, hoi-hoi!
Stanley didn't stop in vaudeville.
When I saved up enough money, went to Italy, to Milan, and had some singing lessons from a little pear-shaped Italian gentleman with a little white beard. And I would have then gone on to, right through to opera. But I had to come back for the First World War to join the army. So that put the finish on my studies in Milan.
Did you really want to be an opera singer?
I did at the time, yes, because I always thought, I thought opera is so much like Shakespeare on the straight stage, that it's so much worthwhile doing. Opera is so much worthwhile singing, and Shakespeare is so much worthwhile studying and doing. And I went through the First World War and came home successfully. And of course I wanted a job right away. I got demobbed. And my friend Leslie Henson, who was just going to appear in a new play, a musical play called Kissing Time, said to me, you better come into our play. He said, I don't think there are any parts left, but he said, you can come in the chorus. I said, well, that'll do me for a start. So I got £4 a week.
The immediate post-war years were hard, and Stanley, with a group of fellow actors, banded together and formed the Co-Optimists. The name was taken from 2 politically significant words which were currently popular: cooperation and optimism. Based on the concert party format, they were a hit. Despite depression, a heat wave, and a coal strike, they played for 6 years at the Royalty Theatre. The Co-Optimist was this marvellous concert party.
Yes, it was. 10 of us, 6 men and 4 girls. They're all gone now, except I'm the only one left. Isn't it awful? What a thing.
What did you do, write your own material?
Well, we evolved our own material. You know, we got together, we all had the same sort of sense of humour, and the good part about it was that they were all solo artists in it. See, that is to say, they could all go out front and hold the audience for 10 minutes or so, and yet they were still willing to form the background for somebody else, make a chorus, you see.
East and west, north and south, fresco to Purim. Didn't matter where he went, the gals were after him. They chased him, pursued him, they would not let him be, till Captain John Macpherson cursed the day he went to sea. At last he grew so weary that he said unto his mate, unless this adoration stops, I'll go clean off my pate. Why can't the gals leave me alone? Said the mate, I'll save you, sir. You take a wife, that's my advice, and leave the gals to her. Oh, east and west, north and south, Frisco to Perim. Didn't matter where he went, the gals were after him. They chased him, pursued him, they would not let him be, but they did when Madam Captain John was mistress of the sea. Oh, was mistress of the sea.
Did you do any films during this time?
I did. When I was rehearsing for the Co-Optimists, I did this film called The Rotters, in which I played the juvenile lead with a motor bicycle and sidecar, and I used to drive it down to the girls' school and park it by the wall, and the girl used to climb the wall, and I used to take her for rides in my sidecar.
Was this a silent film?
A silent film, yes. And I got £5 a day. I used to get 5 £1 notes every evening, which was marvellous for me.
£5 a day. When was that?
1921.
They're probably quite good in those days.
Or 56 years ago as the crow flies, yes.
Well, I have a personal favourite, which is the Lavender Hill Mob.
Yes,
How do you feel about that?
That was a wonderful one, because T.E.B. Clarke, who wrote it, and a marvellous writer he is, and they sent me the script of this thing, and I couldn't put it down. It was like a novel. I was so interested in it because it was so near. It could have happened. This man making the Eiffel Towers out of gold and trying to get it out of the country. Because the only time since then that I've heard of a man who had a facility for getting gold out of the country without too much trouble was a man who made chamber pots of gold.
Oh?
Yes, he did. He made chamber pots of gold and exported them.
In the brief span of half an hour, it is impossible to cover all the work of Stanley Holloway. Among the highlights of his career were, of course, the many songs and monologues which he performed so successfully. Stanley, what happened when you took your new song With Her Head Tucked Underneath Her Arm to the BBC?
I wheeled in my song, and the producer said, oh, you can't sing this. I said, why not? Well, she said, you couldn't sing this song over the air. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, we argued, and so I said, well, let's ask the director of programs. So they rang upstairs, and I had him come down into the control room. And I knew him, can't think of his name. Anyway, I said, well, listen to this and see what you think. So he sat him in the control room, and I started off, in the Tower of London, large as life, the ghost of Anne Boleyn walks, they declare, and so on, you know, with the head tucked underneath her arm, she walks the bloody tower. With the head tucked underneath her arm at the midnight hour. Along the drafty corridors for miles and miles she goes. She often catches cold, poor thing. It's cold there when it blows. And it's awfully awkward for the Queen to have to blow her nose with her head tucked underneath her arm. Sometimes gay King Henry gives a spread for all his gals and pals, a ghostly crew.
The headsman carves the joint and cuts the bread. Then in comes Anne Boleyn to queer the do. She holds her head up with a wild war whoop. And Henry cries, don't drop it in the soup. With her head tucked underneath her arm, she walks the bloody tower. With her head tucked underneath her arm at the midnight hour. The sentries think that it's a football that she carries in, and when they've had a few, they shout, is Arsenal going to win? They think it's Alec James instead of poor old Anne Boleyn, with her head tucked underneath her arm.
I went into the control room, and this, what was his name? I can't think. Roy something.
Roger Eckersley.
Roger Eckersley, you're quite right. My wife is a marvellous prompter. Roger Eckersley. And he was wiping his, he'd been crying with laughter. So I said, what do you think, Roger? Oh, he said, what do you think? I said, well, I think it should go over. I said, you may have people who object because they think it's in the wrong way. I said, I'm not quoting an adjective, I'm quoting a proper noun, the part of the Tower of London called the Bloody Tower. He said, yes, all right, let it go over. And of course it did.
Another of the songs written for Stanley was The Green-Eyed Dragon.
Oh, that was Wolseley Charles. He was a second pianist of ours in the Co-Optimists. And he wrote first of all for me a song called Clothes Props, and then he wrote the Wheel Tappers song, and then he wrote The Green-Eyed Dragon. And because I use them in the co-op, because after about the third spot in the program, I used to get up and sing this, and the chorus at the back used to, you know, with the green-eyed dragon with the 13 tails, he'll feed with greed on little boys, puppy dogs and big fat snails. Off to his lair each child he'll drag, and each of his 13 tails he'll wag. Beware, beware, and
The dragon went round to the kitchen one day where the fair princess was baking. It ate by mistake some rich plum cake that the fair princess was making. That homemade cake he couldn't digest. He moaned and he groaned and at last went west. Now his ghost with bloodshot eyes at midnight clanks his chains and cries, beware, take care of the green-eyed dragon with the 13 tails. He'll feed with greed on little boys, puppy dogs and big fat snails. Whoa! Off to his lair each child he'll drag, each of his 13 tails he'll wag. Beware, take care, and creep off on tiptoes. Then hurry up the stairs and say your prayers and tuck your head, your pretty curly head, beneath the clothes, the clothes.
Because I was engaged to go to the Palladium in 1929 just to sing baritone songs. And I thought, well, it isn't very good varieties as singing baritone songs. So I puzzled my brain. I thought, I must have something to break up the song, something I can speak or gag or something. And I suddenly heard, I think it was Leslie Henson told me this story about the man who dropped his musket or it was knocked out of his hand and he wouldn't pick it up until... And so I wrote it myself one night. In bed, I couldn't sleep. I was trying to rhyme things, so I sat up in bed and tore up an envelope which was beside the bed, some letter, and wrote Sam and the Musket and did it at the Palladium. And it wasn't until afterwards that I realised it was in a book called Cronies at the Inn by a man called Edwin Waugh. he was a great writer of Lancashire stories at that time, and I found a copy of this book up in Hopwoods in Manchester. And this particular episode was called The King and the Volunteer, and it was where the volunteers, the English volunteers, were on parade, and the king was going to inspect them. And John, or Joan as they called him, John, he dropped his gun, and the sergeant said, "John, pike up that gun." And John said, "Thou cludded it down, thou picks it up," you see. And this went on until the king came, and the king asked him to pike up the gun. And so John said, "All right, king," he would for him, so he piked up his gun, you see. And he said, "After that, the king and me got right thick, and we used to powder up and down parade ground together, telling each other stories." And I said to the king one time, "Where's the crown? They're not wearing the crown today." And the king explained that his children were playing with it in the nursery and bowling it up and down the floor, and the rivets had fallen out, and it was at Whitesmith's being repaired.
Any programme about Stanley Holloway would be incomplete without The Lion and Albert. Writer Marriott Edgar had the idea in the first place.
And it was he that said to me one night, I heard the story of the Cockney man and woman who took their son to the zoo, who got too venturesome and got eaten by a lion. And when the keeper said, "Well, you can soon have some more children," and they said, "Do you think we're going to ourselves to death to provide food for your lion?" And he said, "Don't you think you're going to make a good monologue?" I said, "Well, yes, if you could sort of make it presentable." I said, "Why don't you have a go?" He said, "Well, I will."
And so The Lion and Albert became the first of a series of monologues relating the doings of Albert Ramsbottom. The scene was Blackpool Zoo, and all was well until Albert stuck his stick with the horse's head handle into Wallace the lion's ear.
You could see that the lion didn't like it. For giving a kind of a roll, he pulled Albert inside the cage with him and swallowed the little lad whole. Then Pa, who had seen the occurrence and didn't know what to do next, said, "Mother, you're on lion's head, Albert." And Mother said, "I am vexed." Then Mr. and Mrs. Ramsbottom, quite rightly when all's said and done, complained to the animal keeper that the lion had eaten their son. The keeper was quite nice about it. He said, "What a nasty mishap. Are you sure that it's your boy he's eaten?" Pa said, "Am I sure? There's his cap." The manager had to be sent for. He came and he said, "What's to do?" Pa said, "You're on lion's at Albert, and him in his Sunday clothes too." Then Mother said, right, young fella. I think it's a shame and a sin for a lion to go and eat Albert. And after we paid to come in, the manager wanted no trouble. He took out his purse right away, saying, "How much to settle the matter?" Pa said, "What do you usually pay?" But Mother had turned a bit awkward when she thought where her Albert had gone. She said, "No, someone's got to be summoned." So that was decided upon. Then off they went to the police station in front of the magistrate chap. They told him what happened to Albert and proved it by showing his cap. The magistrate gave his opinion that no one was really to blame, and he said that he hoped the Ramsbottoms would have further sons to their name. At that Mother got proper blazing. "And thank you, sir, kindly," said she. "What, waste all our lives raising children to feed bloody lions, not me."
Stanley's career continued to succeed, and it was in 1956 that he scored such a major success with his portrayal of Eliza Doolittle's father, the dustman, in My Fair Lady. His two musical numbers in this show have become world famous. The recipe for success, according to Stanley, is 30% talent and 70% luck. In this, he disagrees with Doolittle.
With a little bit of luck, with a little bit of luck, you can see the bloodhound don't find us. With a little bit, with a little bit, with a little bit of luck, you will find us. With a little bit, with a little bit, with a little bit of blooming luck. To help support his children, which is the right and proper thing to do. A man was made to help support his children, but with a little bit of luck, with a little bit of luck, they'll go out and start supporting you. With a little bit, with a little bit, with a little bit of luck, they'll work for you. He doesn't have a tuppence in his pocket, the poorest lump you'll ever have to miss. He doesn't have a tuppence in his pocket, but with a little bit of luck, with a little bit of luck, he'll get up to easy street. With a little bit, with a little bit, with a little bit, the luck is moving up. With a little bit, with a little bit, with a little bit of
These days, Stanley and his wife spend most of their time at their home, which is near Brighton, on the south coast. They view the theatre from a distance, as it were. Do you have a philosophy on life at all?
Philosophy? Yes. I'm afraid it's a fatalist, I am. Because I think as one door closes, another door opens. And I think everything happens for the best. It's a bit difficult because as you get old or older, you find that your memory plays little tricks with you occasionally, and it's rather irksome. So you have to hope for the best.
Sometimes I hear my childhood calling me. I wonder, will the trees remember me? Daffodils, mistletoe, snow and summer rain. Time be kind to me and let to be seen. Daffodils again.
Sometimes I hear my childhood calling me. I wonder, will the trees remember me?
Daffodils, mistletoe, snow and summer rain. Time be kind to me and let me see. Daffodils